The darkest secrets are almost always hidden behind a wall of calculated silence until the public pressure becomes too heavy to maintain, and the cracks finally begin to show. Right now, a chill is running through the true crime community as breaking developments explode onto the internet regarding the tragic, deeply unsettling death of 31-year-old lifestyle influencer Ashlee Jenae Robinson. Her multimillionaire tech investor fiancé, Joe McCann, has officially touched down on American soil, arriving back at an undisclosed location after local authorities in Zanzibar, Tanzania, quietly handed back his passport. But it isn't just his highly controversial return to the United States that has everyone on edge. For the exact first time since Ashlee was found unresponsive inside a luxury tropical villa, Joe McCann's high-priced legal team has broken their radio silence, releasing a meticulously crafted statement that has sent shockwaves through social media. The legal notice claims Joe is relieved to be back home where he can finally grieve the absolute love of his life, but it concludes with a striking, highly intentional promise that they will have much more to say at an appropriate time in the very near future. This isn't a routine piece of legal paperwork. It is a strategic warning shot signaling that Joe McCann is actively preparing to step into the hot seat, sit down for a highly polished, one-on-one media interview, and attempt to seize total control of a narrative that has completely spun out of his hands. The psychological chess match happening behind closed doors right now is intense, and seasoned criminal investigators are pointing out the deeply alarming timing of this sudden willingness to speak out. For weeks, as international media outlets and Ashlee's grieving family desperately begged for transparency, McCann hid behind his lawyers, locked down his social media accounts, and refused to answer a single question. Why the sudden shift? Why is it that the exact moment his feet touch American dirt, away from the immediate reach of East African investigators, he suddenly finds his voice? To understand the true gravity of this upcoming statement, we have to look directly at the horrifying timeline inconsistencies, hidden financial details, and psychological red flags that he is desperately trying to run away from. The reality of what happened at the Zuri Zanzibar luxury resort is emerging as something far more calculated, manipulative, and sinister than his upcoming public relations campaign will ever admit. To fully grasp the psychological terror of Ashlee's final hours, we have to dismantle the shocking physical mechanics of the resort villa itself, which completely shatter the narrative originally floated to the local police. When hotel staff first rushed into the couple's elite villa, a massive point of confusion was why the entire suite had been plunged into pitch-black darkness. The initial rumors, heavily pushed by those defending McCann, tried to paint a picture of a tragic, self-inflicted incident occurring in a somber atmosphere. However, independent digital sleuths and travel experts have brought forward a devastating architectural revelation that turns that theory entirely on its head. The luxury pavilions at this specific Zanzibar resort utilize a highly modern, smart energy-efficient key card mechanism located on the wall immediately next to the front entryway. For the lights, air conditioning, or any electrical units in the suite to function at all, a guest must physically place the plastic key card into that wall slot upon entering. The absolute millisecond that key card is pulled out of the wall to leave the room, every single light in the entire villa instantly blacks out. This creates a terrifying, mathematically impossible contradiction for Joe's defense. Ashlee could not have possibly staged her own tragic demise in pitch darkness while simultaneously removing the master key card from the wall slot by the front door. The physical layout of the room proves that another person had to have pulled that card from the wall, plunged the suite into total darkness, and walked out, locking the door from the outside and leaving her body behind. This key card revelation blows the doors wide open on a massive, highly coordinated cover-up, pointing directly toward a calculated, premeditated ambush. True crime strategists are now looking directly at the volatile, hyper-controlling behavior Joe exhibited throughout the entire vacation. Information leaked from resort employees reveals that the couple's dream birthday trip had devolved into a toxic, non-stop nightmare of aggressive fighting. According to hotel receptionists and local witnesses, the arguments were centered entirely around Joe's flagrant, repetitive infidelity. Sources allege that Joe was frequently sneaking out of their shared luxury pavilion in the dead of night to meet up with local women, leaving Ashlee completely isolated and vulnerable in a foreign country thousands of miles from home. When Ashlee finally confronted him, a massive, explosive screaming match erupted right outside the resort's main reception desk, forcing hotel management to step in, separate the couple, and demand that Joe move to a completely different villa located a long, 10-minute walk across the property. But the most chilling indicator of absolute psychological entrapment came during Ashlee's final phone call to her mother. During that heartbreaking, final conversation, Ashlee's mother noted a deeply disturbing detail that didn't make sense until now. Joe was standing directly, menacingly behind Ashlee the entire time she was speaking, meticulously monitoring and vetting every single word her daughter uttered to her family. He was actively gatekeeping her lifeline to the outside world, ensuring she couldn't cry out for help or reveal how desperate the situation had truly become. But the rabbit hole goes infinitely deeper, exposing a hidden financial web that turns this tragedy into a sickeningly textbook case of extreme manipulation for profit. In the immediate days following her death, while still overseas, Joe took to social media to post an elaborate, overly dramatic public eulogy filled with festive stories about her cooking, her beauty, and how close she was to his children. At first glance, it looked like the ramblings of a devastated fiancé, but criminal analysts quickly realized the sinister psychological motive behind his words. In that post, Joe went out of his way to explicitly mention their shared apartment, attempting to assert a sense of domestic ownership. Insiders believe this was a calculated chess move designed to manipulate Ashlee's grieving parents into staying away from her residence in Miami, Florida. Joe was physically trapped in Zanzibar while the local police held his passport, meaning he couldn't personally return to Florida to scrub the apartment clean of incriminating evidence. He desperately needed to stall her family from entering that space, terrified of what they would discover waiting for them in her personal files. The ultimate, most damning question remains: who takes out a substantial, high-value life insurance policy on a romantic partner they have only been dating for a single year, and to whom they aren't even legally married? The financial timeline strongly suggests that Ashlee had absolutely no idea this policy even existed. Online investigative circles are buzzing with the chilling theory that Ashlee was never viewed as a life partner. She was targeted, manipulated, and systematically brought to a highly specific foreign destination as a financial sacrifice to pull Joe McCann out of mounting, desperate financial ruin. Every single piece of the timeline, from the sudden luxury trip to the highly publicized, theatrical proposal spectacle, appears to have been perfectly engineered to construct a pristine public image of a doting, grief-stricken fiancé, providing him with the perfect alibi to collect a massive payout. Joe's immense comfort and bizarre level of influence within Zanzibar have only added fuel to the fire of what many are calling a massive institutional cover-up. Unlike a typical tourist who would find themselves completely lost, terrified, and vulnerable when facing intensive interrogation in a foreign country, Joe McCann operated with an alarming level of confidence. Investigations have now confirmed that Joe was not just a casual vacationer passing through East Africa. He was a highly frequent visitor to Zanzibar, deeply entrenched in the local community, and exceptionally well known by the high-level management and staff at that specific luxury resort. More shockingly, local corporate registries have revealed that Joe actually holds significant financial partnerships and hidden business ties within the region, specifically in the medical field involving emergency transport and private ambulance services. This deeply entrenched network explains the baffling, immediate protection he received the morning Ashlee's body was discovered. While local authorities initially detained nearly 10 individuals for questioning, including hotel cleaning staff and a close local associate of Joe's, the entire investigation miraculously stalled out within days, culminating in Joe being quietly handed his passport and permitted to board a flight back to the United States. In certain tourist-dependent regions, foreign justice can be incredibly fragile, hands can be greased, and influential business ties can completely vaporize a criminal investigation before it ever reaches a formal courtroom. This bizarre level of local protection stands in stark, heartbreaking contrast to the absolute stonewalling experienced by Ashlee's family. While Joe McCann was utilizing his connections to navigate the local legal system, Ashlee's parents were thousands of miles away, trapped in an agonizing information vacuum. They weren't given real-time updates by the Zanzibar police, and they weren't allowed immediate access to the villa where their daughter spent her final, terrifying moments. In fact, True crime analysts have noted that the speed at which Joe was cleared and released feels entirely unnatural for a suspicious death investigation involving a foreign national. It raises an incredibly dark question about the role his private medical business connections may have played in the immediate aftermath of the tragedy. Did someone manipulate the initial medical response? Was the scene compromised before forensic teams could properly document it? The sheer lack of transparency from the local authorities has forced the public to realize that the official narrative coming out of Zanzibar was never meant to find the truth. It was meant to protect local commerce and a wealthy, well-connected investor. But as Joe flees the island to hide behind his high-priced American legal team, the spotlight is shifting directly onto his financial history, revealing a pattern of desperate behavior that perfectly aligns with a classic premeditated plot. Financial analysts digging into McCann's recent business ventures have uncovered a staggering truth. Behind the facade of his luxury lifestyle, his tech investment firms were quietly crumbling under the weight of mounting millions of dollars in debt. He was facing impending financial ruin, the kind of public exposure that would completely destroy his high society standing. When we look at the timeline through this lens, the sudden, spontaneous trip to an island where he held massive personal influence takes on a deeply sinister meaning. It wasn't a romantic getaway, it was an execution of a desperate exit strategy. A tragic accident in an exotic, easily manipulated jurisdiction would provide him with the ultimate financial reset, courtesy of a life insurance policy Ashlee likely never knew existed. The psychological profile of Joe McCann is rapidly shifting from a grieving partner to that of a highly sophisticated, narcissistic predator. For over a year, he carefully curated a public image of absolute devotion, showering Ashlee with luxury gifts, tagging her in high-profile social media posts, and culminating in a highly theatrical, multi-camera proposal video that was clearly engineered for maximum online engagement. But criminal psychologists know that this level of over-the-top public adoration is often a camouflage used to mask extreme, covert control behind closed doors. By isolating Ashlee on a remote island where he held all the power, spoke the local language, and controlled the local infrastructure, he had effectively removed every single layer of defense she had. He had created the perfect trap, confident that his money and influence would allow him to walk away completely unscathed. As the second phase of this investigation heats up on American soil, the burning question isn't just about what Joe will say in his upcoming interview, but how he plans to explain the digital evidence he left behind. Rumors are swirling that digital forensics experts have managed to recover cloud backups of Ashlee's final messages that paint a horrific picture of fear, betrayal, and a desperate desire to leave the island days before her death. The walls are closing in on Joe McCann, and no amount of public relations spin can change the physical reality of the room or the financial desperation that preceded it. The public is no longer buying the tragic accident narrative, and as we move deeper into the dark secrets of his financial empire, the truth behind this paradise nightmare is finally being dragged into the light. The narrative Joe McCann is desperately trying to construct back home on American soil begins to utterly fracture when subjected to the rigid, unyielding coldness of a medical timeline. To fully understand the level of deception Ashlee Jenae's family has been forced to navigate, one must look directly at the staggering 11-hour gap of silence that occurred between the moment Ashlee was found unresponsive in her villa and the moment Joe finally decided to dial her mother's phone number. 11 full hours passed while Ashlee lay in a foreign medical facility, fighting for her life against catastrophic cerebral hypoxia caused by strangulation and suffocation. During those critical, harrowing hours, when any normal, panic-stricken partner would be screaming for international help and alerting the victim's family, Joe McCann chose absolute, calculated radio silence. When he finally did place that call to Ashlee's mother, Yolanda, his words weren't filled with the frantic urgency of a tragedy. Instead, he casually assured her that Ashlee was completely stable. It was a blatant, chilling pacification technique designed to stall her loved ones and control the flow of information. Hours later, the illusion shattered completely when the hotel management, not Joe, called the family to deliver the devastating news that Ashlee was dead. Joe's immediate instinct wasn't to comfort her family, it was to drop a curtain of total silence, a choice her father, Harry Robinson, has publicly blasted as incredibly disturbing. This unsettling pattern of avoiding her family reached a boiling point during Ashlee's homegoing service in New Jersey, exposing an irreconcilable chasm between Joe McCann and the people who knew Ashlee best. While her family, friends, and thousands of heartbroken followers gathered to celebrate her vibrant 31 years of life, Joe McCann was conspicuously absent. Insiders have confirmed that Joe was completely blocked and shut out of the funeral entirely, with Ashlee's loved ones refusing to allow him anywhere near her final resting place. The psychological optics of this are massive. While he was actively excluded from mourning her in the real world, Joe chose that exact same day to execute a highly public relations-driven counterstrike on social media. He posted a lengthy, overly sentimental tribute on X, waxing poetic about how Ashlee loved to cook for him, how deeply she bonded with his children, and how her greatest dream was to become a mother. It was a masterclass in digital manipulation, designed to paint himself as the tragic, grieving fiancé for his corporate peers while simultaneously distracting the public from a glaring, undeniable reality. The people who raised Ashlee view him with absolute, unshakable suspicion. The suspicion only intensifies when you look at the physical items Joe has managed to keep away from her grieving parents. When Ashlee's body was finally flown back to the United States after agonizing bureaucratic delays, she arrived completely stripped of her personal identity. Her family revealed a highly alarming detail to investigative reporters. None of Ashlee's personal belongings had been turned over to them. Her cell phone, the ultimate digital vault containing her final text messages, location data, and the raw audio of her escalating arguments with Joe, remains completely missing or held tightly out of the family's reach. Even more shocking, the expensive engagement ring that Joe had theatrically slipped onto her finger just days prior during their safari proposal has completely vanished. If Joe is as innocent and devastated as his PR team claims, why is he or his network retaining the final physical pieces of Ashlee's life? By withholding her phone and her jewelry, he is effectively starving her family of the closure they deserve, while keeping the most critical pieces of forensic and digital evidence locked away from independent American analysts. This calculated withholding of evidence perfectly mirrors the chaotic and defensive maneuvering Joe exhibited the moment the Tanzanian authorities began to look closely at the resort villa. According to local media logs, Zanzibar investigators initially felt immense pressure to wrap the case up quietly, initially echoing Joe's narrative to avoid an international scandal that could paralyze their luxury tourism industry. But as internet sleuths and independent true crime analysts began matching the hotel's layout with the physical impossibility of the scene, the local police were forced to take a step back, eventually confiscating Joe's passport and subjecting him to intense rounds of questioning. Yet, despite listing her official cause of death as strangulation, the local system allowed Joe to slip away the moment the initial storm quieted down. He didn't stay to fight for her justice. He didn't stay to help her family pack her clothes. He took his passport, booked an undisclosed flight, and ran straight back to the safety of his American legal shield, leaving a trail of unanswered questions vibrating across 2 continents. The battle for justice has now shifted dramatically to American soil, exploding into a high-stakes forensic warfare that Joe McCann's high-priced legal team never anticipated. While Joe sits in his undisclosed sanctuary drafting a polished, media-trained script to declare his innocence to the world, Ashlee's family has completely bypassed the compromised and deeply suspect findings of the Zanzibar medical examiners. Upon the arrival of Ashlee's body in New Jersey, her parents immediately commissioned a comprehensive, independent American autopsy and a state-of-the-art toxicological screening. True crime investigative analysts are highlighting that this independent second autopsy is the ultimate wildcard that Joe cannot control. Forensic pathologists in the United States operate under strict, unyielding protocols, completely insulated from the corporate and political pressures of East African tourism boards. This independent team is currently executing a microscopic examination of the deep tissue trauma around Ashlee's neck, meticulously looking for signs of defensive struggle, fingernail scrapings, and specific petechial hemorrhaging patterns that can definitively distinguish between a self-inflicted tragedy and a violent, calculated manual strangulation. The agonizing suspense surrounding these pending laboratory results has pushed public tension to a literal fever pitch, as the forensic data threatens to completely shatter Joe's narrative before his upcoming media tour even begins. Adding fuel to this raging fire is the explosive public reaction and the sheer velocity at which the true crime community has mobilized against Joe McCann. Online sleuths, independent investigative journalists, and massive true crime networks have completely overtaken social media platforms, transforming the case into a viral corporate nightmare for Joe's tech investment firms. Every single piece of content he has ever uploaded is being systematically weaponized against him. Digital analysts have been dissecting his old vlogs, his corporate interviews, and his financial portfolios, exposing a chilling history of erratic behavioral patterns and extreme psychological manipulation. The internet has essentially crowdsourced a massive parallel investigation, uncovering old civil litigation files and whispered corporate scandals that paint Joe not as a brilliant tech visionary, but as a highly volatile, financially desperate individual who would go to extreme, unthinkable lengths to maintain his elite status. This relentless digital dragnet has effectively trapped Joe in a virtual prison. He knows that the moment he steps in front of a camera to deliver his highly anticipated statement, millions of viewers will be watching with a hyper-analytical lens, ready to dissect every micro-expression, every defensive stutter, and every calculated tear. Behind the scenes, the psychological toll on Ashlee's inner circle has reached a breaking point, sparking fierce debates within the true crime community about the dark realities of modern influencer relationships. Close friends and fellow lifestyle creators who moved in the same Miami social circles as Ashlee are finally breaking their silence, sharing terrifying insights into the covert, psychological warfare Joe waged against her long before they ever boarded that flight to Tanzania. They describe a classic, textbook cycle of narcissistic abuse, an initial phase of intoxicating love bombing filled with global travel and public adoration, slowly giving way to intense financial control, calculated isolation, and systematic gaslighting. Friends reveal that Ashlee was quietly planning an exit strategy of her own, feeling increasingly suffocated by Joe's hyper-controlling surveillance of her career and her personal life. This highly volatile dynamic adds a sickeningly predictable motive to the timeline. A narcissistic predator realizing his prize is about to escape his control forever, opting to execute an ultimate, permanent act of elimination in a foreign jurisdiction where he believed his immense wealth could buy him absolute immunity. As the world counts down the days until Joe McCann finally breaks his silence, the focus remains locked on the glaring, irreconcilable contradictions that his upcoming statement must somehow answer. He must explain to an increasingly hostile public why his immediate reaction to finding his fiancée unresponsive was an 11-hour wall of silence instead of an immediate cry for international medical help. He must explain why he has aggressively withheld her personal cell phone and her final physical belongings from her grieving mother and father. Most terrifyingly of all, he must look into a camera and explain the undeniable physics of that luxury Zanzibar villa, the smart energy key card slot that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that the room was intentionally plunged into pitch-black darkness from the outside by a second individual. The upcoming interview will not be a moment of genuine transparency. It is a desperate, calculated chess move by a man who realizes the forensic and digital walls are closing in on him at a terrifying speed, setting the stage for a dramatic showdown between wealth-fueled deception and the unyielding pursuit of forensic truth. What makes this entire situation truly terrifying is the chilling realization of what Joe McCann's sudden willingness to speak actually signifies for the future of this case. Throughout this entire nightmare, from the moment Ashlee's body was discovered in that closet with a belt around her neck to the moment he quietly reclaimed his passport from Tanzanian authorities, Joe operated under a shield of absolute protected silence. But true crime strategists know that when a prime witness or suspect suddenly changes tactics and prepares for a massive media interview, it isn't out of a desire for truth. It is a calculated defensive maneuver because the walls of justice are closing in at a rapid pace. This impending statement is an orchestrated attempt to preemptively clean his public image before the independent American forensic results drop. It is a psychological counterstrike aimed at a public that has already meticulously dismantled his alibi using hotel physics, financial timelines, and the undeniable reality of that smart energy keycard slot. He knows he can no longer hide from the digital footprints and the mounting inconsistencies, so he is stepping directly into the spotlight to try and manipulate the narrative one last time. But as the world prepares to watch Joe McCann take the hot seat, the ultimate moral weight of this tragedy rests squarely with the family he left behind in his wake. While Joe sits in an undisclosed location surrounded by crisis management teams and high-priced attorneys, Ashlee's parents, Harry and Yolanda, are left standing in the wreckage of a paradise trip that turned into their worst psychological nightmare. They are the ones who had to bury their 31-year-old daughter in New Jersey while the man who swore to protect her was actively blocked from the service, choosing instead to launch a self-serving public relations campaign on social media. They are the ones left demanding the resort's surveillance footage, pleading with the international community for basic transparency, and fighting a grueling bureaucratic war just to recover their daughter's missing cell phone and her final physical belongings. The horrific gap of 11 hours between Ashlee's catastrophic injuries and Joe's brief, minimizing phone call to her mother remains a burning, unanswerable indictment of his character that no polished television interview can ever erase. Plus two, ultimately, this case has transcended a typical international mystery, evolving into a profound and chilling cautionary tale about the hidden, toxic undercurrents that can exist beneath the surface of highly curated, picture-perfect modern relationships. It forces us to look past the beautiful safari proposals, the luxury lifestyle vlogs, and the glossy social media facades to confront the stark, terrifying reality of narcissistic control, isolation, and financial desperation. Ashlee Jenae Robinson was a vibrant, deeply loved beacon of light who went across the globe to celebrate her life, only to return home in a casket because she was trapped in an environment where her partner held all the institutional power and economic leverage. As the true crime community counts down the seconds until Joe McCann finally breaks his silence, we are left with a haunting, unshakable question that will follow him for the rest of his days. When the cameras finally turn on, and he looks into the lens to deliver his meticulously prepared statement, will the world be watching a man fighting for his innocence, or will we be bearing witness to a desperate, calculating predator realizing that no amount of wealth, influence, or public relations spin can ever outrun the blinding light of the truth?